Hi, welcome back to Storytime with David Booker. I appreciate you being here. Look forward to having you here for another reading. And one of the advantages of having my own site and my own books is that I can kind of pick and choose which stories I want based on what, if I like them. And I've got one here that I want to read starting today that is kind of one of my favorites. It's called The Reluctant Left Hand of God. So let's begin. God number 005 was seated in his transportation throne and rode in on the solar winds. He had been given a new section to administer, and he rubbed his hands with anticipation. He parked centrally and looked around. In the far distance were billions of suns flickering. Each had their own god, and each was in competition for promotion to area manager. Flicking his Ronson lighter, he blew so the flame went flying. It stopped a short distance away, centered itself, and he set it spinning with his finger. As the flame spun, it compacted and became brighter. That's better, God thought as he looked around. He gathered a small collection of asteroids and pressed them in his hand. With a fingernail, he gouged out some elaborate features. Planet without features was boring, and he wanted to stay interested. A lot depended on his performance here. And if he did well, a promotion would be in store to control of a galaxy. He made a few more globes and then crafted them as he did the first. Each was to be different to add diversity. He held the last one in his hands and regarded it intently. He had special plans for this planet. He worked carefully and gouged out large sections for oceans. When he had enough, he popped a sucker in his mouth to increase his saliva, then spat, filling the oceans to capacity. He stuck a finger in his ear and spread the contents over the face of the globe. Placing it near the fire, he allowed it to heat until the surface was covered in green mold. This was allowed to grow and evolve. He placed the orbs hovering in front of him and then set them spinning. He stood on his throne and pulled a retractable pool cue out from a side of the cushion. With the right English, he could set them in orbit around the fire. The first went around close and in perfect orbit. He set the others in motion and then sat back and admired his work. Due to the gravitational differential of the other planets, the orbit of the one closest to the sun began to stretch. God shrugged. It wasn't a big enough problem to deal with right then, maybe later. As he watched, he saw that the orbs were being hit with asteroids as they passed by. Irritated by the destruction on his lovely planets, he placed smaller orbs around the larger ones so that the asteroids would hit them instead of his nice clean planets. Satisfied, he sat back and watched them. He quickly began to lose interest watching them spinning around. He dropped onto the planet he had worked hardest on. It was a work of art, and he wandered around admiring the sun's light and warmth filtered by atmosphere and clouds. The vegetation was varied. He sampled a few, and other than a slight taste of earwax, they were excellent. There were plenty of differing vegetables and other forms of flora that could be eaten or simply appreciated. He was enjoying himself. He rose and sat back on his seat. His fingers drummed on the arm of his throne, the steady beat drifting off into the cosmos. Boring, he shouted to the celestial ether. He closed his eyes and thought about having some company. From his thoughts materialized a host of beings, a host being 25. But not liking an even number, he thought up to 26th. Unfortunately, at the point of creation, God was distracted when one of the new angels farted. All the laughter startled God, and the new angel didn't come out as he intended. This one was short and balding. Its beard was scraggly, the wings slightly lopsided, and its face seemed to be perpetually astonished. God was about to eliminate this uncouth being, but it looked so pathetic that God relented and had him mingle with the rest. For a while, God was content. With his new company, he played poker and pool. He created a nice place for them to hang out at and said it was so nice it was like heaven. They was agreed, so it became the heaven pool and pub room. Every now and then, God would invite one of his angels to see the planet he had created and given life to. He was justifiably proud of his creation and wanted to share it. All the angels that he brought admired its beauty and varied plant life. That is all except the runt. He was brought down and immediately cried out, "Boring!" God cocked an eyebrow at this impertinent angel. The angel hastened to explain, "No offense meant, but God, it's so boring. There's no active life to it. It's just a nice garden. Whoop-to-do." God looked around and saw that the runt was right. It was boring, and he could see it now. He called down his host. "Why didn't any of you tell me how boring it was here?" The angels cast a look of irritation at the runt. "Well, you are God, and everything you do is perfect. How could we tell you it was flawed?" God stamped his foot, creating a fissure which would become the Grand Canyon. "Hell, if I wanted a bunch of yes men, I wouldn't have given you free will. So, show me what it needs." The angels sat on the ground and dug up some earth and began forming animals to bring life to the planet. These were allowed to roam freely. The runt went over by a tree and was forming an animal of his own. He kept giggling as he formed it, and when done, he went behind God and set it between his legs. God felt the brush of fur against him and picked up the small object. He turned it over and over, trying to figure out what the heck he was looking at. "All right, which one of you drunkards made this monstrosity?" He held it in front of him by the scruff. "This looks like a committee effort where everybody gets to choose his favorite part, then stick them together." He looked down to see a runt with a red face and cheeks puffed, trying his best not to laugh. "Oh, this is your whatever you call it. So what do you call it?" The runt's laughter burst out at last. He was weak and leaning on the guy's leg as he asked, "It's a platypus!" And he lay on the grass and his feet kicked up in the air, laughing all the more. God shook his head, shrugged, and put the platypus down to go doing whatever a platypus would do. God turned to the runt. "Better?" The runt looked around. "Better, but it's still boring." God slapped his sides in exasperation. Turning to the angels, he asked for suggestions again. They were set to make more animals when God held up a hand and turned to the runt. "Well, Brainiac, what do you think we need?" The runt sat on a rock and putting his elbow on his knees and his chin on his fist, he thought hard. He jumped off the rock and ran up to God. "People! It needs people! They kind of look like us, but don't have all the magic stuff we do. They don't have wings either, and they have to do everything for themselves. That's what makes them interesting." God patted the runt on the head as the other angels made the noise usually associated with the phrase ass kisser. God had each of the angels make some people. God himself sat by a pile of dirt and made one as well. The runt was on the other side of the dirt pile and was fashioning his own, but he wasn't content to just make one that was similar to himself. He added and subtracted and fashioned something very different from the others. God had everyone bring their creation to life. From the other side of the dirt pile, God heard a long, low whistle. From around the pile came a figure who walked with supple grace and who made God and the angels blush. So beautiful was it to behold. God admired the runt's work. "Hey, what do you call this masterpiece?" The runt was transfixed by his own creation. "It's a she." When a he and a she get together, they'll make more all over the world. Soon all the angels were creating a she. Once life was given to them, the she's and he's immediately got together and had the first orgy. God looked down at the commotion happening around him. Well, it isn't boring now. One day God woke later than usual. From the time he slept to his awakening, several hundred years had progressed on earth. By his bed was a stack of reports. He rang for breakfast and sat up to read what had happened during his nap. He was interested in what happened to the two people he and the runt had made and who had chosen to be together. Apparently their children were not what would have been expected from the first ones created. He tut-tutted over Cain and Abel's constant bickering over which one was better and which was more loved by God and their parents. When he read about Cain slaying Abel, he slammed the papers down, breathing heavily. He picked up the papers and continued. Every report was about things going from bad to worse. God ate his breakfast hastily and then called a meeting. He stood on one of the pool tables and clapped his hands to get everyone's attention. "All right, when I went to bed, everything was fine. The people were starting to spread out and start families. The earth was doing well and growing everything anybody would want. Not only did one of you idiots place a tree of knowledge in their midst, but also a tree of life. What were you thinking? To make matters worse, I see that you let a couple of them eat from the tree of knowledge. I don't mind free will, but giving them the same kind of knowledge that we have really screwed things up. It was too much, too soon. Really messed with their heads. He looked around the room. Well, that damage has already been done, so we can't stop it, but I'll be damned if I'll let them eat from the tree of life. 4 of you cretins will have to stand guard around it. Take swords with you to use as a threat. Rotate sentries every 10 years or so. 4 left to draw swords from the lockers and head to earth, grumbling loudly about having to stand guard. Can we bring chairs? You'd be just as threatening with the swords. He was smacked upside the head for the suggestion. God said stand guard, not sit guard. Hold on one second, I want to drink. God sat heavily into a chair and quaffed a beer. The runt was confused. God, why not just uproot the trees? God looked down and patted the runt's head. Nope, they planted them, now they have to deal with the consequences. He took the runt by the hand, and together they went down into a cloud to observe what was happening. God lay on his stomach on the cloud and peered over the edge. His sandaled feet kicked in the air. He dropped the cloud closer for a better look. Not liking what he was seeing, he expelled air through his rear and sped across the face of the earth. There seemed no end to the mischief the people were getting into. Lying, cheating, rape, and murder were rampant, and there seemed to be very little that could be done about it. The runt was sitting next to God on the cloud. His feet dangled over the side as he solemnly watched the scene that seemed to be depressing God. Runt, what the heck did we create? You would have thought with our bringing them to life and part of ourselves being part of them, they would have turned out better. The runt kicked his feet and watched below, not noticing that one of his sandals was slipping off. It dropped suddenly and landed on a person's head, knocking him out cold. When he awoke, the man seemed dazed and in a state of confusion. God and the runt brought the crowd closer still, as the man seemed more interesting now. He was going around buying up as much wood as he could. Next, he bought nails and tar. He made marks on the earth and drew a shape resembling a boat. When he hit his head with your sandal, I think you scrambled his brains. Looks like he's going to build a boat, and he's nowhere near any water, especially not enough to float that huge thing. The runt flew down and retrieved his sandal. As he rose again, he kept looking back at the man. He felt guilty at causing the man's confusion and wanted to set things right. Hovering in front of God, he looked down again. God, do you mind if I go down and fix him? He's going to receive a lot of grief. Received a lot of grief for doing this. God was watching as stakes were laid down and boards and poles were laid next to them. No, I kind of want to see this one through. The runt sat down next to God, and after ensuring his sandals wouldn't fall off again, he continued to kick his feet. Reaching over, he took a handful of cloud and stuffed it in his mouth. He puffed out smaller clouds and linked them together. Down below, the man was working feverishly to build a boat. Some of his neighbors came over to find out what the heck he thought he was doing. When he explained that it was necessary because it was going to rain soon, they laughed. They decided to humor him, though. They shrugged and helped him build his boat. They acted as if it was a serious endeavor, but when his back was turned, they laughed again and made rude gestures. They wanted to see what this lunatic was going to do when he had a huge boat outside his house and no water to take it anywhere. The runt felt bad for the man and kept asking God to let him fix the poor man's head. God was adamant that he wanted to see this one through and was getting irritated at the continual niggling. Look, if you can't sit still and watch this with me, do me a favor and go run my bath. The runt grunted and aimed for God's bathroom. Due to his wings being slightly off center, he had to aim to the left so he could arrive at the bathroom door. He started the water and tested it to ensure it was hot enough to God's liking. Since God's tub was extraordinarily large, he floated off to the pool room until it filled. He liked pool and was gradually becoming better the more he played. Several angels who were playing cards and drinking challenged him to a game. The runt was delighted. He ran to the end of the table and racked up the balls. The first game went quickly as the runt knocked the 8-ball in on his third shot. Soundly defeated, he called for a rematch and racked them up again. The second game went longer and was more evenly matched. He went to check on the tub, informing the other angels he'd be right back. Well, seeing an opportunity to get the runt in trouble, they distracted him so the tub would overflow and make a mess. When he came back and the game began, they all crowded around the table. Whenever he made a shot, the angels would cheer. Whether he won or lost, there was always another challenger, and the runt played game after game, getting more excited and single-minded as the games went on. All the time, the water in the tub was nearing the rim. In the meantime, God was still watching as the man and his neighbors had almost finished the boat. There was plenty of room inside, as the boat was enormous. God went down to have a closer look and talked to the man. He landed a cloud nearby and strolled up to the builder. So, why a boat out here? The man rubbed his temples. I've been asked that so many times until I'm tired. We're in for a big storm. I mean, a real big storm. So big it's going to pick this boat up and take it away. God looked up at a clear sky. So, when's the rain going to start? Soon. Very soon. So, why is the boat so big? Got a huge family or something? The man looked startled. No, I'm not sure why I built it so big. He looked up to the highest point and then from stem to stern. It really is big, isn't it? The man looked up at the sky. A few drops of rain began to fall from a clear sky. God was confused. He hadn't set up rain for today. Perhaps one of the angels wanted to have some fun with this guy by sending down a summer shower. The boat's owner was running inside, tossing his possessions into the boat and pushing his family inside. As you rushed about, God asked him his name. The man answered distractedly, no, I usually just called Fred. All God heard was the no, The rest of this statement was lost in a clap of thunder. From then on, the man's name was Noah to God. Moments later, the rain started to come down harder, gathering in pools on the ground. God excused himself and went to the clouds he had been resting on. Rising, he checked the other clouds and over this area. Look, the rain wasn't coming from here. He went to the pool room. Everyone was crowded around the pool table, and the runt was making a spectacular break. Cheers sounded on all sides as the runt made shot after shot. God was surprised the runt was doing so well and paused to watch. The runt was clearing the table in effortless style and looked around, acknowledging the enthusiastic cheers. He spied God looking over an angel's shoulder, and at that moment remembered God's bath. With a red face, he flew like a missile for the bathroom. The tub must have been overflowing for a while and was leaking out the door and pooling in the cloud outside. He went with a bucket and mop outside just as the cloud gave way under all the excess weight and dropped the water on the earth. The animals with an instinct for survival more developed than the people's had migrated to the large boat and were welcomed inside. No one noticed, thankfully, that each animal had brought with them some food to last a while. The man locked the boat and climbed up with his family into the topmost cabin. The runt was on the earth trying to fill buckets of water and dump them into the oceans. God came down and told him not to bother. The runt was hurt. But God, what about all the people that came from the originals we made? God shrugged. Seems to me they weren't our best work. We'll see how the small group works out, and if they don't, we'll try again. God went up to take his bath, performing a cannonball into it that sent another 1,000,000,000 gallons earthward. The runt sat up on top of a mountain and watched the water cover the earth. With all the water from heaven finally done running over, he spread his wings and began fanning the earth, endeavoring to evaporate it all. Up in the pool room, the angels were disappointed that the runt didn't get in trouble for flooding the earth. They huddled together to work out a new scheme for ridding themselves of teacher's pet. The runt watched the boat settle in a pocket of the mountain he happened to be on. The occupants and animals all departed quickly as the stench of animal and human feces was overwhelming. Even the runt high on the peak placed a wing over his nostrils. The people from the boat settled near the foot of the mountain and, being a randy bunch, immediately began to repopulate the earth. By the time God was finished with his bath, enough time had passed on the earth that people were once again populating in abundance. What a horny bunch these people are, thought God. The angels were called for another meeting. God stood on the pool table and brought the meeting to order. Look, there have been a few attempts in getting this plan to head in the right direction. Thanks to the Runts accident, we have an opportunity to start again. We'll keep a sharp eye on this new beginning and see how it goes. If these don't work out well, I'll just have the Runt draw me another bath. God chuckled at his joke as he took the Runt and had him rack up a game. The Runt got a pitch of beer and some glasses, then racked up for 9-ball. First ball popped high into the air and through the window. It hurtled through space, speeding up until it blazed like a comet across the sky. It landed with a powerful crash into the center of the huge landmass. The force of its landing created cracks, and then the Pangea was broken into many smaller landmasses that drifted apart on the waves. The angels rushed up to the cloud God used as an observation platform and peered hopefully over the side. While the Runt repaired the window, God sailed down to the cloud to see what damage the pool ball had done. The angels were nudging each other in high good humor. Well, this ought to do it. The Runt would finally get his comeuppance. God lighted on the cloud and looked over the earth. He stood transfixed at the varied continents and small islands. He put his head on one side and folded his arms. The angels waited for an explosion. God called for the Runt very loudly. The Runt came rocketing down and stood before God at attention. God bent down and looked the Runt in the eyes. Well, you've done it again, haven't you? The Runt peeked over the side of the cloud and saw the earth now broken up. He gulped and he looked up at God's stern countenance. God, I'm sorry. I just used too much force on the brake and God held a restraining hand. I meant you screwed up something in such a way that's actually an improvement. The angels gasped. It's going to be interesting to see how this pans out. Now they're isolated from each other and will develop independently. Now we'll get some real diversity. Well done. God took the Runt's hand and they went back up to finish their game. The angels remained on the crowd and groused about how every time the Runt screwed up, God was all, well, aren't you clever? Look at how much better things are now. They moaned and groaned back up and drowned their anger in beer. Okay, I think we're going to stop there. The next one is Mission Implausible, where God sends the Runt on a mission. So we'll continue this one in a couple of days and get another chapter out. I hope you enjoyed this so far. Let me know if you do. And I look forward to seeing you again on our next reading. So thank you for visiting. Appreciate you being here. And I look forward to seeing you on the next reading. So be good to yourselves and have a good day. Bye.